Until a lone human boy crossed her path, the Dragon Queen mourned her lost young. The galaxy was silent. Cold, empty. Not the kind of empty that came from the vast stretches of space that was familiar, predictable. No, this emptiness was deeper. It was the kind that lives inside someone after losing everything, a kind that no star, no planet, no cosmic storm could ever fill. Queen Vaelthera, the last dragon queen of the Ember Dominion, drifted silently through the dark corridors of space. Her scales, glowing faintly with the fire of her kind, reflected the light of distant stars like scattered gems. Each movement was graceful and precise, like the flow of a river of molten gold. But her eyes were dull now. They were mirrors of sorrow, reflecting memories of a life and a civilization that had been torn from her in a single, devastating instant. Vaelthera had once been the ruler of a mighty species, one that could shape stars and ride the solar winds. The Ember Dominion had stretched across countless star systems, its cities shining like constellations themselves. Her hatchling, the last heir, was the hope of their people, the continuation of a proud lineage. The thought of her young one had once made her wings tremble with joy, her roar shake entire planets, and her heart swell with fierce pride. But that joy had been extinguished in a cosmic blink. A fracture in space, unpredictable and merciless, had swallowed entire systems in lightless void. She had tried to save her hatchling, to shield it with her own body, to flee into the safest pockets of reality, but even the mightiest dragon could not outrun a fracture that devoured stars. Now, Vaelthera was alone. She drifted from system to system, never staying in one place for long. She avoided civilizations, hiding in asteroid belts, moons, and the hollowed remains of dead stars. Communication was forbidden. She would not answer any signal, not from allies, not from strangers. The galaxy had whispered stories of her ghostly presence, calling her the Wandering Flame, but none had seen her closely enough to know the weight of her grief. Her life had become a pattern of emptiness. Sleep, hunt for sustenance, drift, think, remember, grieve. Over and over, she spoke only to the fading stars, reciting the names of her lost hatchling over and over, hoping that by naming them she might somehow call them back. Then, one day, everything changed. It started with a faint signal. A weak pulse almost drowned by the cosmic noise of distant quasars. Vaelthera detected it while she passed a forgotten system on the edge of a small spiral galaxy. Her senses, honed over millennia, recognized the signal immediately. It was life, simple, fragile, and human. She had not seen humans in a very long time. They were unpredictable, short-lived, and yet endlessly fascinating to her kind. The signal came from a planet that the galaxy had long ignored, classified only as Sector Theta 9. Vaelthera had no reason to investigate. Humanity was a fleeting spark compared to the long-lived Ember Dominion, yet something about this signal, it felt different. Perhaps it was defiance. She altered her course, her massive wings cutting through space, bending light around them. Even the stars seemed to step aside as she approached the planet. From orbit, Theta 9 looked like a broken gem. Its surface was battered and scarred. Craters marred its continents, and violent storms swept across deserts that had long since given up any attempt at life. Abandoned human colonies dotted the surface, skeletal remains of their ambition, reminders that not all civilizations could survive even the smallest miscalculations. And yet, the signal pulsed. Vaelthera landed in a canyon carved by impacts older than the oldest Ember Dominion cities. Dust rose in slow, lazy spirals around her as her massive claws touched the jagged stone. Her wings folded carefully, each scale shifting like liquid fire, the glow from her body casting shadows that stretched across the canyon walls. She did not roar, she did not announce her presence, she simply watched. And then she saw him, a boy, human, small, alone. He was moving carefully through the ruins of a research station, repairing a damaged solar panel with tools that looked far too fragile for someone of his size. Vaelthera's first instinct was to turn away. Humans were unpredictable, dangerous in their own way. And yet he did not notice her. He did not run, he did not scream, he was alive. Against all odds, he had survived. The boy's hair was messy, dusted with the red sand of the canyon. His clothes were patched, layered with scavenged materials that were never meant to fit him properly. His eyes, wide and alert, scanned the surroundings constantly. He was cautious, careful, brave, or perhaps reckless, but she could not tell the difference yet. Velthora moved closer, her massive frame making the ground tremble. He froze when he noticed her shadow stretching over him. For a moment she expected fear. She had seen it countless times in lesser creatures. Panic, crying, desperate pleas for mercy. But the boy did not react in any of those ways. He tilted his head slightly as if studying her. And then he spoke. "Are you lost too?" Velthora paused. The question, simple and innocent, struck her in a way that nothing else had in centuries. No fear, no awe, no worship. Just a question. For the first time in a long while, Velthora felt something stir inside her, curiosity. She studied him silently, the silence stretching as long as the canyon itself. The boy did not run. He did not scream. He did not even hide. He simply waited. Velthora had expected hostility from the humans she had seen in old records. Humans had conquered planets, started wars, destroyed entire ecosystems. But this boy, he was different. Something about his defiance, his stillness, made her consider possibilities she had long thought impossible. She lowered her massive head slightly. Her nostrils flared, sensing the faint smell of earth, sweat, and fire. She could feel the life force emanating from him, weak, yes, but resilient, persistent. And then she spoke, her voice a low, rumbling vibration that shook the canyon walls. "I am not lost," she said. The boy's eyes widened. He had expected her to roar, to attack, to vanish in flames. He had not expected words. "I am," he said carefully, "but I survive." A small spark of recognition lit within Velthora, survival, the same drive that had allowed her to endure centuries of loss. The same determination that had once fueled her hatchling. She had lost much, but perhaps this human boy was not just another weak spark in the galaxy. She circled him slowly, her massive wings unfolding slightly, casting shifting shadows. Every movement was deliberate, controlled, filled with the grace of a predator who knew it could crush everything beneath it. Yet she did not strike. The boy met her gaze steadily. "I am alone," he admitted. There was no complaint in his voice, just fact, just truth. Velthora's chest tightened. The emptiness she had carried for so long throbbed like a wound. She wanted to look away. She wanted to vanish into the darkness of space and forget the fragile human spark. But she could not. For the first time in centuries, she felt a connection, a small, fragile connection that might grow. "You are very brave," she said, her voice softening. The rumble of her words echoed through the canyon like distant thunder. "Or very foolish." The boy gave a small shrug. "Maybe both," he said, "but being afraid won't help me. I learned that the hard way." Velthora's eyes narrowed slightly. Humans were strange creatures, weak in body, yes, but their minds, their hearts, could endure what many dragons could not. She had spent centuries mourning her lost hatchling, drifting endlessly through the stars, believing that no life could ever replace the one she had lost. And yet, here was this boy, small and fragile, standing before her without fear, without begging, without weakness. Perhaps he could not replace her hatchling. Perhaps no one could. But maybe he could remind her that life in the galaxy could continue, that the spark of existence still burned somewhere, even in the smallest, most unexpected forms. Velthora did not speak for a long time. She simply lowered her massive wings, letting the light from her glowing scales wash over the boy. And for the first time in centuries, she allowed herself to feel something other than grief, curiosity, hope, and the faintest whisper of possibility. The galaxy was still cold. Still empty, still vast, but for the first time in a long time it felt alive. And in that moment Queen Velthora realized that her journey was far from over. Something had crossed her path, something small, fragile, and human. And somehow she knew it mattered. The canyon was silent after their first meeting. The human boy, Aaron Hale, stood frozen for a moment, his eyes wide as he took in the massive dragon in front of him. The scales on her wings shimmered like molten gold, and the fire in her eyes reflected both power and sorrow. She was enormous, taller than the tallest building Aaron had ever seen, wider than the canyon walls themselves. Yet despite her size, there was something calm in her presence, something that made him feel not afraid. Velthora watched him cautiously. The boy had not run, he had not screamed, he had not even trembled. Instead, he had looked at her with something like recognition, as if he understood more than he should. It had been centuries since she had seen anything like that. All she had known before was fear. Fear in others, fear in herself. Fear was simple, fear was predictable. But this was something else. "You are alone," Velthora said softly, her voice rumbling like distant thunder, carrying both authority and curiosity. "Yes," Aaron replied, his voice steady. I survived, my colony, everyone else, they didn't. Velthora lowered her massive head closer to him, the heat from her body washing over him like sunlight. She could feel his heartbeat, small, fast, steady, weak yet determined. She had not expected such resilience from a human so young. He was not afraid. He was cautious, yes, but he had not fled or hidden. That took courage or foolishness. She had not yet decided which. "What is your name, little human?" she asked. "Aaron Hale," he said without hesitation. His eyes did not waver from hers, though the canyon's shadows made her look even more massive. "I'm 12 standard years old. I've been alone here for a long time." Velthora thought of her hatchling, of the small creature that had once been warm and alive beneath her wings. She had never heard a human speak of loss with such matter-of-fact clarity. Humans were fragile, yet somehow enduring. She tilted her head, considering him. "You survive by yourself?" she asked. "Yes," Aaron said simply. "I have to. There's no one else." He glanced at the ruined station behind him, the walls scarred by storms and age. "I've learned how to fix what I can. I find water, I find food, I repair power, I survive." Velthora studied him closely. Survival was what had once driven her too, survival and duty combined with pride and love. But pride and love were useless without life. That was something she had learned too late. "You are very persistent," she said, the rumble in her voice vibrating the canyon walls. "Do you not fear me?" Aaron shrugged. "I've learned to deal with fear. Running won't help me, screaming won't help me, hiding won't help me. I have to survive, that's all I can do." Velthora's chest tightened slightly. His words echoed the truth she had been avoiding for centuries. Life was more than grief. Life was more than loss. Life was survival. For days, she observed him from the edges of the canyon, careful not to interfere. He scavenged metal from old machinery, repaired broken circuits, and kept his small shelter alive against the desert storms. He talked to old recordings of his parents, sometimes pretending they were still there, sometimes asking questions he already knew the answers to. Velthora could feel herself drawn to his persistence. It was quiet, unassuming, yet stronger than many empires she had ruled. She had thought the galaxy had nothing left to teach her. Now she was beginning to see differently. One day, a radiation storm swept through the canyon. Lightning arcs of blue and violet crackled across the sky, and the wind roared like the voice of 1,000 angry spirits. Aaron worked frantically to repair the power generators before the storm reached them. Sparks flew from the exposed wires, and the small station trembled under the storm's pressure. Velthora rose into the sky, her wings spreading wide as she descended over the station. Her body glowed with the heat of 1,000 suns, shielding the station with a protective aura. She absorbed most of the energy from the storm, letting only a small fraction reach the ground. Her scales glimmered brighter than the storm itself, a living barrier between the boy and death. When the storm finally subsided, Aaron emerged from the station, blinking against the dim glow of her scales. He looked at her with awe but not fear. Instead, he simply said, "You saved me." Velthora's massive head lowered so that her eyes were level with his. "Yes," she rumbled softly, "but do not mistake this for kindness. I am not accustomed to small life forms like yours surviving storms." "I survived because I had to," Aaron replied. "You just helped." The Dragon Queen considered his words. There was honesty in them. Not arrogance, not flattery, just truth. She had seen so few beings speak truth so plainly. Days turned into weeks. Velthora continued to observe him, sometimes providing silent protection from storms, sometimes letting him learn and grow on his own. The boy repaired old machinery, cultivated small gardens from the scarce soil in the canyon, and even managed to tame some of the local fauna into companions. He never complained. He never gave up. Velthora began to descend closer, curious about his behavior. One evening, she landed near the station while he was working on a broken solar panel. Sparks flew as he connected wires, and the faint smell of ozone filled the air. He looked up and froze until he realized she had not attacked. "You are not afraid of me," Velthora said, her voice low and calm. "Most humans would be." "I've learned that fear doesn't help," Aaron said. "It slows you down, makes you weak. You survive by thinking, by acting, by being alive. That's all that matters." Velthora's massive eyes softened. These humans, they were fragile, yes, short-lived, weak in comparison to her species, yet they were persistent. They endured, they adapted. And this boy, this tiny human, had survived where others had failed. She lowered her head fully this time, letting the heat from her body wash over him. Aaron did not flinch. He continued working on the solar panel as if she were merely part of the landscape, another hazard to work around. "Why do you not run?" she asked finally. "Because it wouldn't help," he replied. "Running would just waste energy. Hiding would just waste time. You are here, you exist, and I have to survive. That's the way it is." Vaelthra's wings folded slowly, and she settled near the station without touching it. The ground trembled slightly under her weight, but the boy did not stop. He continued his work, unfazed by her presence. Something inside her shifted. She had mourned for centuries. She had avoided life, avoided connection, avoided the universe itself. And yet here was this tiny human, teaching her a lesson she had forgotten. That persistence, courage, and hope could exist even in the smallest and most fragile of beings. That night, Vaelthra did something she had not done for hundreds of years. She spoke to him softly as he slept in the small station, murmuring the names of her lost hatchling. Not to awaken him, not to demand attention, but simply to speak, to remember, and perhaps to teach herself that memory could coexist with new life. Aaron, despite the noise of her voice and the warmth radiating from her scales, did not wake. Instead, he dreamt of his parents and his home world, feeling safer than he had in months. For the first time, he sensed a presence in the galaxy that was not threatening. Vaelthra remained awake, watching him through the long hours of night. The stars reflected in her eyes, distant and bright, and she realized that this small human had touched something deep inside her, something she had thought dead. The Dragon Queen had been alone for too long. But for the first time in centuries, she wondered if perhaps loneliness could be broken, not by another of her kind, not by her lost hatchling, but by something different, something human. The galaxy remained vast and indifferent. The storms continued to rage. The world itself was harsh and unwelcoming. Yet in the quiet of that canyon, between one human boy and one ancient dragon queen, a fragile bond began to form. One day, Vaelthra thought, this boy might teach her what she had forgotten. That life was not just about survival, nor just about loss. Life was also about connection, about hope, about finding sparks of courage in the smallest places. And perhaps she realized quietly that might be enough. The sun rose slowly over Theta 9, painting the canyon walls in shades of red and gold. Dust swirled in the early light, caught in the remnants of storms that had passed through during the night. Inside the ruined station, Aaron Hale was already awake, moving carefully between broken equipment, scanning each panel and wire as if his life depended on it. Today, it did. Vaelthra hovered silently above the station, her wings spread wide, casting a massive shadow over the canyon floor. Her molten scales reflected the sunlight, glowing like living fire. The heat radiated down, warming the ground and the small figure beneath her. She had not moved this close in weeks. She observed him not as a predator would, not as a queen would, but as someone who wanted to understand, to see what this fragile human could do that had kept him alive all this time. Aaron glanced up and caught her gaze. He did not flinch. Not anymore. Not after weeks of watching her move, breathe, and even protect him from the storms. He had learned to accept her presence. In some strange, unexplainable way, she had become a constant like the sun, like the canyon walls, like the wind. A strange, powerful presence that could destroy him in an instant, and yet did not. "Good morning," he said simply. Vaelthra tilted her massive head. "Good morning," she rumbled, the sound low and soft like distant thunder. "You work tirelessly, little human. Do you not tire?" Aaron shook his head. "I get tired," he admitted, "but if I stop, nothing works. No power, no water, no shelter. I have to survive. That's all I can do." Her eyes softened, watching him move with practiced skill among the ruins. There was something admirable about him. Not just his resilience, but the way he approached problems. He did not panic. He did not curse the universe. He adapted. He learned. He solved each problem one small step at a time, and for a human so young, that was extraordinary. "You remind me of someone I once lost," Vaelthra said quietly, almost to herself. "My hatchling, so determined, so fearless. You are not the same, but similar." Aaron paused, his small hands still on the tools he held. "I don't know if that's good or bad," he said softly. "I just survive, that's all I can do." Vaelthra's massive wings twitched slightly, sending small tremors across the canyon floor. "Good," she said. "Then continue, learn, endure, and perhaps you may survive longer than most of your kind." Days passed in this quiet rhythm. Vaelthra rarely spoke to him directly. She watched from above, intervened only when danger approached, and sometimes allowed him to make mistakes. small, controlled mistakes that he could recover from. It fascinated her, this human spirit that seemed to grow stronger under pressure. One afternoon, a sandstorm rose unexpectedly from the desert beyond the canyon. The winds howled, carrying red dust that stung the eyes and filled every crevice of the broken station. Aaron scrambled to secure loose equipment, tying wires and panels together with what little he had. His hands were scratched and bleeding, but he did not stop. Vaelthera descended, landing beside the station. The impact shook the ground, sending a small cloud of dust into the air. She lowered her wings, creating a protective barrier over the boy and his fragile shelter. Sparks from broken wires ignited briefly in the storm's friction, but she absorbed most of the energy, keeping him safe. "You do not need to do this alone," she said softly. "I can protect you." Aaron looked up at her, his eyes tired but steady. "I know," he said, "but I have to learn. If I rely on someone else, I won't survive if they're gone. I have to know how to do it myself." Vaelthera considered his words carefully. Humans were strange creatures. Fragile, yes, but their minds were strong. Their hearts even stronger. They could endure far more than her species could imagine. And this boy, he was not afraid, not really. Not of her, not of the storms. Not of the vast emptiness of space surrounding his little planet. For hours, they worked side by side, though Vaelthera's, side by side, meant she hovered or rested near the station, letting him do most of the physical labor. She watched him fix the generator, reroute power lines, and repair sensors damaged by the storm. Her presence was a silent comfort, not interference. And Aaron worked with a quiet determination that impressed her more than she expected. That evening, after the storm had passed, Aaron sat outside the station, cleaning his tools by the fading light. Vaelthera settled nearby, her massive form dwarfed by the canyon but smaller in presence than she had been earlier. He glanced at her, then looked away, returning to his work. "You do not speak much," Aaron said finally. "Do you ever get lonely?" Vaelthera's eyes softened. Loneliness. The word was heavy with memory. Centuries of solitude had carved emptiness into her soul. "I do," she admitted. "More than you can imagine, but it is safer this way. Closer to others only brings pain." Aaron looked thoughtful. "I'm alone too," he said quietly. "For a long time, I lost my family, my colony, everyone, but I keep going. I guess, I don't know, maybe I hope someone will understand me one day." Vaelthera's massive head lowered closer to him, her glowing eyes reflecting the last rays of sunlight. "You are brave," she said softly, "or foolish." Aaron smiled faintly. "Maybe both," he admitted. "But bravery is better than nothing, and I've learned that nothing is worse than giving up." A small moment of silence passed. The canyon seemed to hold its breath. The boy and the Dragon Queen, so different, so vast in size and species, yet sharing something unspoken: endurance. Persistence, life. Vaelthera shifted her wings slightly, sending a warmth across the ground where Aaron sat. He looked up again, meeting her gaze. There was no fear, only curiosity, only understanding. Days became weeks. Vaelthera slowly began to descend closer each day, allowing the boy to move freely under her protection. She taught him things in silence: how to sense approaching storms, how to detect shifts in the desert that signaled danger, how to read the skies for incoming meteor activity. She did not speak often, but her presence was a constant teacher. Aaron learned quickly. Faster than she expected. Soon, he could anticipate storms before they hit. He could track small creatures across the canyon floor. He repaired old machinery with skill that impressed even Vaelthera, and still, he never showed fear. One evening, as the twin moons rose above the canyon, Vaelthera allowed herself to lower her head fully beside him. The glow from her scales bathed him in light, and he did not flinch. Instead, he handed her a small piece of metal he had repaired, a token of his work. "You do not need this," she rumbled softly. "I know," he said, "but I want to give it. It is what I have, and I think you might like it." Vaelthera considered the small metal piece. It was simple, rough, and insignificant by any measure, but it carried meaning, effort, care. Persistence. The boy had made something from nothing, just as he had made his life from the ruins around him. "I accept it," she said finally, "not because I need it, but because I understand its value." Aaron smiled faintly. It was the first real smile Vaelthera had seen from him that was not forced or fearful, and for the first time in centuries, she felt a small flicker of warmth inside her, a feeling she had thought dead. The night passed quietly. The stars shone above them, distant and eternal. Vaelthera remained awake, watching over the boy as he slept in his small station. His presence was fragile, yes, but it was alive. And for the first time in centuries, she wondered if perhaps life, no matter how small, no matter how fragile, could heal a heart that had long been broken. The Dragon Queen had been alone for too long. She had mourned for centuries. She had believed herself unfit for connection, unworthy of companionship. And yet, here was a human boy, small and fragile, teaching her something she had almost forgotten. That persistence, courage, and hope could grow in even the harshest conditions. Vaelthra did not speak as she watched him sleep. Words were unnecessary. Presence was enough. And that presence, steady and unwavering, had begun to weave a fragile bond between dragon and human, a bond that would only grow stronger with time. Somewhere in the galaxy, Vaelthra realized, hope still lived. And it lived not in empires, not in power, not in glory, but in the quiet courage of a single human boy who refused to give up. For the first time in a long time, the Dragon Queen believed that perhaps she was not entirely alone. And perhaps that was enough to keep going. Weeks passed quietly in the canyon on Theta 9. Aaron, Hale, and Vaelthra had settled into an unusual rhythm. The boy repaired old machines, gathered water, and maintained his small shelter. The Dragon Queen hovered nearby, watching, teaching silently, and protecting him from the harsh storms that swept across the planet. Life was fragile here, but it endured. Then, one day, a distant signal interrupted their routine. Aaron froze as the soft beep of his repaired communication panel echoed through the canyon. For months, he had tried to contact other humans, hoping in vain that someone would respond. Most channels were dead, broken, or completely ignored, but this one it was different, strong, a human fleet. Vaelthra noticed the change immediately, the subtle shift in the boy's posture, the tension in his small frame. He was alert but cautious, curious but fearful. She tilted her head, her molten eyes studying him. "You receive a signal," she said softly. "Yes," Aaron admitted, fumbling with the panels. "A fleet, humans, I don't know if they will come or if they'll even find me." Vaelthra studied the signal's patterns, humans, ships. Communication relays. She had seen humans before during brief encounters across the galaxy, but never in numbers like this. Entire fleets. And now they were aware of a lone human and something large, something alive, guarding him. "Do they know what is here?" she asked, her voice quiet but sharp. "I don't think so," Aaron said. I didn't send a location. This must be an old relay picking up my signal from a year ago. They'll come whether I want them to or not." Vaelthra's massive wings spread slightly, creating a protective barrier over the small station. "Then we prepare," she rumbled. "Do not fear them, they are weak compared to me. But you are human, you are fragile, and I will not allow harm to come to you." Aaron nodded, his small face serious. "I know you won't, but I have to be ready. They may not understand, they may see you as a threat." Vaelthra exhaled, a soft wave of heat radiating around her. She had expected fear from humans. From every encounter, she had learned that fear was the first reaction, followed by aggression. Yet this boy, small as he was, seemed unafraid. Even now, he faced a possible fleet of humans with courage she had not seen in centuries. Days later, the horizon glimmered with the approach of distant lights. The human fleet had arrived. Ships larger than Aaron could have imagined glided into orbit, engines humming, weapons powering up, sensors scanning every inch of the planet. Vaelthra rose into the sky, her wings spread wide, scales glowing like molten gold. The canyon trembled under her presence, dust and small rocks cascading down the walls. She had not moved so openly in weeks, but she would not allow these humans to mistake caution for weakness. Aaron climbed to the ridge above the station, his small figure silhouetted against the rising fleet. He raised a hand toward the ships, signaling them to wait, to stop. The human admirals, visible through distant communication channels, were startled. They had expected a lone survivor. Perhaps a small, fragile human, not this. Not a dragon queen of living fire, massive enough to engulf their ships in seconds if she wished. Vaelthra hovered, tilting her head toward the fleet. Her eyes glowed, scanning, assessing. She could destroy them with a single motion. She had the strength of millennia, the power of suns, yet she did nothing, not yet. One ship opened its communication channel, a voice crisp and commanding. "Identify yourself, state your purpose." Aaron raised a hand again, stepping forward on the ridge. "This is Aaron Hale," he called. "I am the last survivor of the Theta 9 colony. You will not attack. She is not your enemy." Vaelthra watched him carefully. The small human, barely 12 years old, had just commanded an entire fleet to hold fire. Against her expectations, they paused. Weapons powered down, scanning systems switched to passive mode. Erin's voice carried across the canyon, across orbit, across the fleet. She saved me, she protected me from storms, I trust her, and if you attack her, you attack me. The fleet hesitated. Humans had records of the Ember Dominion, legends of dragon-like beings of immense power. They had been taught to fear them. And now, standing before them, was a dragon queen of living fire, not attacking, simply protecting a human child. Vaelthera exhaled, a small plume of glowing heat rising from her nostrils. She did not move toward the fleet. She did not roar. She simply hovered, her presence alone demanding caution. One admiral finally responded, his voice shaky. What is this? Are you saying the child is protected by this dragon? Yes, Erin shouted. She is my protector, she is not your enemy, do you understand? We do not attack, we survive together. Vaelthera lowered her head slightly, letting her eyes meet his. His courage, his voice, his simple defiance of fear, it impressed her beyond measure. She had faced warriors, fleets, entire civilizations. But the courage of a small human, standing alone, commanding others with nothing but words, that was extraordinary. The fleet did not attack. Slowly, they lowered weapons. Scanners shifted from aggressive to cautious observation. Humans, despite their fear of dragons, could recognize bravery when it stood in front of them. Vaelthera's massive wings folded as she settled closer to the canyon floor, keeping a protective glow over Erin. She had not yet spoken directly to the fleet. That would come later. For now, presence was enough. Erin looked at her, his eyes shining with relief and gratitude. "Thank you," he whispered. "You didn't have to do that." "You do not yet understand," Vaelthera said, her voice low. "I protect you because it is right. Not because you are human, not because you are strong, but because you exist. That is reason enough." The fleet continued to hover above, uncertain, analyzing the situation. Vaelthera could feel their fear, their curiosity, their calculations of risk. They had never encountered anything like her, and yet they waited, listening to a small human boy. Erin realized then that humanity had more than technology. They had courage. They had reason. And sometimes, even when faced with unimaginable power, they could pause, assess, and choose life over destruction. Vaelthera sensed this. It was what drew her to Erin in the first place, not just his survival, but the way he represented a part of humanity that was stronger than machines, stronger than weapons, stronger than fleets. It was hope, persistence, life. Hours passed, communications continued. Erin spoke to the fleet, explaining his presence, explaining Vaelthera's role, explaining that she had saved his life. Slowly, understanding began to form in the minds of the admirals. They realized that she was not here to conquer, not here to destroy, but here to protect. And in that realization, the tension began to ease. Vaelthera remained silent, but her presence alone was enough to command respect. She did not need to roar, she did not need to attack. Her size, her glow, her careful movements, and her unwavering protection of a human child spoke louder than any weapon ever could. Erin finally relaxed slightly, sitting on the ridge as he continued to communicate with the fleet. He explained the storms, the ruins, the canyon, and the harshness of Theta 9. He spoke of survival, of life, of endurance. And slowly, the humans began to understand the boy and the dragon not as a threat, but as an ally. By nightfall, the fleet had made a decision. They would not take aggressive action. They would observe. They would attempt communication and negotiation. And perhaps, if they were careful, they could learn from what they had witnessed, a bond between a human and a dragon queen, fragile yet unbreakable. Vaelthera exhaled slowly, settling on the canyon floor beside Erin's station. The boy looked at her, a faint smile on his dusty face. "We did it," he whispered. "Yes," she said, her voice soft. "But this is only the beginning. The galaxy will not understand immediately. There will be challenges. There will be those who fear, who seek to control, who will see power and mistake it for threat." Erin nodded. "I know, but I have you, and now maybe they can see what I see." Vaelthera lowered her massive head so that their eyes were level. The glow from her scales bathed him in warm light. "Then we face them together," she said. The stars above the canyon twinkled quietly. The fleet hovered in orbit, uncertain but alive. And below, in the quiet of Theta 9, a fragile but powerful bond had proven itself strong enough to command respect across the galaxy. For the first time in centuries, Vaelthera felt something she had thought lost forever. Hope. Hope that life could continue. Hope that connection could exist. Hoped that even the smallest human could teach a dragon queen that survival was more than endurance. It was courage, understanding, and trust. And Aaron Hale, the boy who had refused to fear, had done exactly that. The canyon of Theta 9 was quiet, though the hum of human ships in orbit reminded Aaron and Vailthura that the galaxy was watching. Weeks of negotiation, observation, and cautious communication had passed, and slowly the humans had come to understand what Aaron had already known. Vailthura was not a threat. She was a protector. The Dragon Queen hovered above the canyon floor, her wings spread wide. The glow from her scales lit the station and the surrounding rocks with warm, molten light. Aaron stood on the ridge, looking at her with admiration. Together they had faced storms, isolation, and now the scrutiny of an entire fleet. The bond between them had grown, fragile yet unbreakable. "We have to decide," Vailthura rumbled, her voice calm but firm. "The humans cannot remain in orbit indefinitely. They fear what they do not understand. We must act before fear turns into hostility." Aaron nodded. He had thought about this moment for weeks. He understood the responsibility now resting on his shoulders. "I know," he said, "but we can show them the truth. We can prove that we are allies, not enemies, together." Vailthura tilted her head, a plume of heat rising from her nostrils. "Very well, we will show them." The next morning, the fleet received a transmission unlike any they had ever seen. The human child, standing at the canyon's ridge, spoke directly to the admirals and crews aboard the ships. His voice was steady, clear, and filled with a quiet authority that only someone who had endured total isolation could command. "I am Aaron Hale," he said. "I am the last survivor of Theta 9's colony. You may think I am alone, you may think I am weak, but I am not alone. This is Vailthura, the Dragon Queen of the Ember Dominion. She saved my life. She protected me from storms, from death, from loneliness. She is not your enemy. She is my protector, and I trust her. You can too." The admirals hesitated. They had heard tales of the Ember Dominion, of dragons who could destroy entire fleets with a single roar. They had weapons, technology, and strategy. Yet they had never encountered courage like this, a small human standing before a dragon queen, commanding respect with words alone. Vailthura descended slowly, her wings creating gentle gusts that stirred dust across the canyon floor. She did not roar. She did not show aggression. Her molten eyes fixed on the fleet not as a threat, but as a warning. Any harm to the boy would be met with the full force of her power. The fleet held its position. They did not fire. They did not advance. Humans were not fools. They understood power when they saw it, and they understood loyalty when it was shown. Aaron stepped closer to Vailthura, his small hand reaching up as if to touch her massive claw. "We must show them," he said softly. "We must prove that we are allies, that life is stronger than fear." Vailthura inclined her head. "Then we act." Together, they demonstrated what they could do. Vailthura flew low over the canyon, creating protective barriers of heat and fire that could deflect any attack. She used her immense strength to clear debris, repair damaged equipment, and even help Aaron stabilize his small power systems. The humans watched, astonished, as a dragon queen moved with grace, precision, and purpose, not to destroy but to protect. Aaron spoke to the fleet continuously, explaining the harsh conditions of Theta 9, the storms, and the ruins. He showed them how he had survived, how Vailthura had protected him, and how humans and dragons could work together. Slowly, the humans began to understand. Fear was replaced by curiosity, curiosity by respect, and respect by trust. One admiral, the fleet commander, finally spoke. "We came here expecting a threat," he said. "Instead, we see partnership. A child and a dragon surviving together. Perhaps we have much to learn." Vailthura exhaled, her wings folding slightly. She did not smile. Dragons did not smile as humans did, but there was a sense of relief in her posture. She had not only protected the boy, but also helped him teach the humans something extraordinary: trust, courage, and the strength of life itself. Days passed, and negotiations continued. The fleet proposed evacuation for Aaron, fearing that Theta 9 was too dangerous. But the boy refused. He would not leave Vailthura behind, and she would not leave him. Together, they proposed an alternative, a mutual pact. Vailthura would remain on Theta 9 as a protector of the frontier. Humanity would recognize her presence and sovereignty. Together, they would defend the planet, the canyon, and any future settlers against dangers from storms, raiders, or other threats. The fleet agreed. It was unprecedented. No treaty had ever recognized a non-human species as both sovereign and protector of a human colony. Yet it was fitting. Velthora was no ordinary creature, and Aaron was no ordinary boy. Together, they had survived where others had failed. Together, they had turned fear into respect, isolation into alliance. Months later, the first human settlers returned to Theta 9, cautious but inspired by the stories of Aaron and Velthora. They found the boy, now older, teaching newcomers how to survive in the harsh canyon, and the Dragon Queen, hovering protectively above, watching over them all. The settlers were amazed, a creature of living fire guarding humanity, not for conquest, but for trust and alliance. Aaron worked tirelessly, showing humans how to live alongside Velthora, how to understand her signals, how to respect her space while benefiting from her protection. Slowly, the canyon became a hub of life again. Where there had been ruins and silence, there was now laughter, learning, and community. Velthora observed quietly, allowing humans to live and learn while remaining ever vigilant. She still carried grief for her lost hatchling, but that grief was now tempered by hope. Hope that life could continue, that bonds could form across species, that even in the harshest conditions, courage and trust could create something extraordinary. One evening, as twin moons rose above the canyon, Aaron climbed to the ridge once more. Velthora landed beside him, her massive form dwarfing his small figure. Together, they looked out over the canyon, over the lights of the new colony, over the human ships in orbit. "You have done well, little human," Velthora said. Her voice rumbled softly, warm and calm. "You have taught me much. You have shown that courage is not measured by size or strength, but by persistence, loyalty, and hope." Aaron smiled faintly. "And you've taught me too," he said. "You've shown that even the strongest, most powerful beings can protect, care, and trust. That life is more than survival, it's about connection." Velthora inclined her massive head. "Yes," she said, "connection, life, and hope." From the canyon floor, the colony continued to grow. Humans built homes, repaired technology, and explored the harsh desert beyond. And above them all, Velthora flew silently, ever watchful, ever protective. The galaxy had not yet fully understood the bond between dragon and human, but that did not matter. On Theta 9, life flourished. Storms continued to rage. Challenges arose. But together, Aaron and Velthora faced them all. The boy who had refused to fear and the Dragon Queen who had mourned for centuries had created something stronger than legend, a partnership that could survive anything. And across the galaxy, stories began to spread. Humans spoke of courage, dragons spoke of hope, and stars themselves seemed to burn brighter where Theta 9 glimmered. The galaxy remembered, finally, that humanity's strength was not in weapons or numbers. It was in choice, in courage, in the ability to trust and protect, even in the smallest and most unexpected forms. Aaron Hale would grow to become the first ambassador between humans and dragons, teaching understanding, courage, and coexistence across the stars. Velthora would remain his guardian, a living flame, a protector of life, and a symbol of hope for all who dared to dream beyond fear. In the quiet of the canyon, under twin moons, the Dragon Queen and the human boy looked out over the world they had saved together. They had turned grief into hope, fear into courage, and loneliness into connection. The universe was vast and often cruel, but here, in this place, one truth was clear. Humans did not conquer monsters. Humans befriended them, and in doing so, they made the galaxy less lonely. The Dragon Queen had not replaced her lost hatchling. She had found something different, something extraordinary. Life, courage, hope, and a bond strong enough to endure across species, across worlds, and across the stars.